Imagine you've got 6 speeding tickets and 10 parking tickets. All of that would amount to hundreds of pounds, maybe over 1,000. And then one day someone comes and says, "Oh, don't worry about it. I'll pay them all for you." You'd be like, "Really?" That's what Jesus did for you. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night, good day to you. That's depending where you are in the world. It is Sabbath. It is Friday evening. The sunset was around about 7 p.m. And that brings in the Sabbath. So Sabbath blessings, one and all. We're doing the nighttime devotion from the devotional Christ Triumphant. The title today, Christ Crucified for Us. Luke 23:33. And when they were come to the place which is called Calvary, there they crucified him, and the malefactors, one on the right hand, the other on the left. For transgression of the law of God, Adam and Eve were banished from Eden. Christ, our substitute, was to offer without the boundaries of Jerusalem. He died outside the gate, where felons and murderers were executed. Full of significance are the words, "Christ have redeemed us from the curse of the law, being made a curse for us." Upon Christ as our substitute and surety was laid the iniquity of us all. He was counted a transgressor, that he might redeem us from the condemnation of the law. The guilt of every descendant of Adam was pressing upon his heart. The wrath of God against sin, the terrible manifestation of his displeasure because of iniquity, filled the soul of his Son with consternation. All his life, Christ had been publishing to a fallen world the good news of the Father's mercy and his pardoning love. Salvation for the chief of sinners was his theme. But now, with the terrible weight of guilt he bears, he cannot see the Father's reconciling face. The withdrawal of the divine countenance from the Saviour in this hour of supreme anguish pierced his heart with a sorrow that can never be fully understood by us. So great was his agony that his physical pain was hardly felt. Satan, with his fierce temptations, wrung the heart of Jesus. The Saviour could not see through the portals of the tomb. Hope did not present to him his coming forth from the grave a conqueror, or tell him of the Father's acceptance of the sacrifice. He feared that sin was so offensive to God that their separation was to be eternal. Christ felt the anguish that the sinner will feel when mercy shall no longer plead for the guilty race. It was the sense of sin, bringing the Father's wrath upon him as the sinner's substitute, that made the cup he drank so bitter and broke the heart of the Son of God. Amid the awful darkness, apparently forsaken of God, Christ had drained the last dregs in the cup of human woe. In those dreadful hours, he had relied upon the evidence of his Father's acceptance heretofore given him. He was acquainted with the character of his Father. He understood his justice, his mercy, and his great love. By faith he rested in him, who it had ever been his joy to obey. And as in submission he committed himself to God, the sense of the loss of his Father's favour was withdrawn. By faith, Christ was victor. So we have to bear in mind, although Christ as a human was also divine, he still had to remain 100% human. It's like when you get someone who's a master at pool. They're brilliant. They can do everything with pool. And yet they walk into a bar pretending they've never played it before in their life. And I'm not saying that it's as easy as that. It was easy as that for Jesus. But Jesus had to be the human for every moment of his existence as a human. He was not allowed to touch, to even think about his divinity. Because by doing anything like that, everything he would be doing as a human would be rendered useless, because he's drawing on his divinity to help him as a human, and he cannot do that if he is to overcome sin and beat Satan at his own game. I don't know if you noticed, but it did say that Christ had to suffer and die outside the gates of the city. Now, if you think about, or if you know about the sanctuary or the tabernacle that God got Moses to build with the big tent, the tents and the outer court, etc. That is all pointing to Jesus. Jesus had to be killed outside of the city gate of Jerusalem, just the same as when the sacrifices are brought in or brought to the gates to go to be sacrificed. The priest has to slit their throat outside and then bring it in to have the blood and to burn as the sacrifice, etc. Just the same as Christ had to be killed outside. Something you can look into. It talks about the wrath of God against sin. Jesus carried every single sin that was there to be carried for the whole human race. As a human, he then maybe has elements of doubt, because he's now going to die a sinner. The huge, immense amount of sin he had to bear, with the full faith that he will be forgiven and will be resurrected. Bear in mind, he is human, and all those evil thoughts being placed in his head of doubt, just like you and me. We are getting these evil thoughts and these doubtful thoughts put into our heads. And we must stay focused on Jesus, on our Father in heaven, in full faith and no doubts that we will overcome, and we will be saved, redeemed, taken up. Enjoy your Sabbath.